Lies are okay. The ends justify the means.
But do they? This is the question South Park wrestles with in My Future Self and Me. Now, parents tell a lot of lies. The baby comes from the supermarket. If you keep hitting the horn, the car will run out of beeps. And then there is the biggest lie of them all. Just tell me the truth. I won't punish you. Parents justify these lies in many ways. The parents of South Park are also no different. They lie to their kids from time to time for various reasons, but unlike your parents, there was one time in season 6 where they just took it way too far. The story starts off innocuously enough.
Throw it away, Clyde. I'm not gonna touch it, you throw it away.
Some high schoolers have left a joint on a tree stump. The boys find it and they all agree that the joint should be thrown away. Nobody wants to touch it. Their fears are inspired by the fear-mongering around Mary Jane. It's the gateway drug that will lead to harder drugs.
Are you on drugs or alcohol?
No, sir.
Do you take drugs or alcohol?
What is drugs?
It will turn the boys into terrorists and murderers and worse.
Add the commercial where the two kids have pot and the one kid shoots the other.
The boys are wrestling with their dilemma when Stan turns up. Stan is not afraid. He says that the things they've been told by their parents, their teachers, and TV are all just exaggerations. To prove it, Stan does the one thing they're all afraid of. He touches it.
There, see? I touch marijuana. No big deal.
But it is a big deal. Stan just went against everything the whole of society has been telling him and his friends. He's not the first kid to rebel. Going against what society and your parents telling you is normal. We all do it from time to time. Sometimes we get away with it, sometimes we don't. And Stan doesn't. The consequences are swift and scary. The storm is just the beginning. While Stan is watching the Osbournes, his mom changes the channel and puts on the news. And it's not good. The police are looking for a time traveler who has been running through the streets screaming, the past, oh my god, it's the past!
Which is what one would expect someone from the future to yell.
That crazy man from the future rings Stan's doorbell.
Oh my god, it's the past!
He is shocked by everything. But who is he?
It's me, Mom, your son, Stan!
Nobody believes him, obviously. Randy tells him to go away, but then the man reveals a set of details that nobody else could possibly know.
Your name's Randy Marsh, you're a geologist, and you don't like chicken.
This interaction is very awkward, but this and another anecdote about Sharon convinces Stan's parents that this man is indeed their son from the future. They let him in. He tells them a few more stories just to prove that he is who he says he is.
I can still remember when I was 5 and you both found that squirrel I'd been keeping in the closet.
So why has future Stan traveled back to the past? Well, he was trying to shoot up some smack in an alley behind a crack house when an electrical storm started and sent him back in time. He's also been a junkie for pretty much his entire life. It turns out that the joint Stan touched wasn't so harmless. His 32-year-old self is a living testament to that.
I spent a lot of my teenage years on a slow downward spiral experimenting with drugs and alcohol.
Now, Stan is obviously not happy to hear this. We all have some visions of our future, and I'm going to take a big swing here and guess that nobody wants to become a junkie loser. We all assume that our future selves will achieve all the dreams we have today, but we never get to meet our future selves. Not in the present, anyway. Stan is both lucky and unlucky in that regard. He can see the consequences his actions have on his future self right in front of him. The rest of us have to wait 20 years to find out. This gives us plenty of opportunities to screw up even harder, but not Stan. He has to share his room with the failure of a future self. The guy follows him everywhere, and Stan can't stand it. All the guy does is drink and smoke and spill his food all over the place because he eats like an animal. Stan is disgusted. But this is a good thing. Dealing with his future self gives him all the motivation he needs to fix his life in the present. He starts taking his studies very seriously. He even gets Butters to tutor him.
I can't stand my future self. I have to do whatever I can to not become a loser like him.
While talking to Butters, Stan discovers that Butters also has a future self. Future Butters has been staying with the family for nearly a month. Seems like a pretty big piece of information to withhold. Why did Butters do it?
Nobody asked.
Stan goes to meet Butters' future self. Future Butters is a lot like future Stan. He has a bad liver from all the drinking he did in high school. Butters also took that as a lesson to behave himself. But Stan has other ideas. Those are just way too many coincidences.
Butters, don't you think it's a little bit of a coincidence that both your future self and my future self got caught in a next time plane?
Stan rummages through his future self's things until he finds the guy's wallet. He finds a driver's license identifying the guy as a loser. That stings. But he also finds a keycard from Motivation Corp.
This expires in 2002. Why would he have this in his wallet?
And that is a good question. This episode came out in 2002. Stan's future self has presumably traveled to the past from the year 2022. So, why on earth would he be carrying around a keycard that expired 20 years ago? This is a mystery Stan and Butters decide to solve. There is an address on the keycard. They go and check it out. The boys sneak into Motivation Corp. While hiding behind some indoor plants, they see something they're not supposed to see.
This is Josh Kashner. He'll be playing the role of your future son. Nice to meet you, Mom and Dad.
It's a crushing realization for Stan. His future self is not real. It's just some actor his parents hired to motivate him. Great idea in theory, very questionable in practice. Parents do this all the time. They tell their kids a lot of little lies and sometimes even big lies. And this is done mostly to protect kids from the reality of things like death, and sometimes they just lie to dodge sensitive topics, especially when the kids are young. A lot of these lies are inexcusable. I am not angry at my mom for telling me that babies come from the supermarket. I was too young to understand the mechanics of reproduction, and I suppose she was just trying to protect my innocence. I am a little angry at her for threatening to return me when I misbehaved, though. That was uncalled for. Every time she took me shopping, I ended up clinging to her skirt to make sure she didn't leave me behind. Turns out it was just a trick to stop me from wandering around and demanding things she didn't want to buy. Despicable. But still, forgivable. What Stan and Butters' parents did, however, goes way beyond what any of our parents did to us. It's beyond despicable, beyond forgivable. It's the sort of thing that completely destroys any trust you have in somebody.
Oh, that makes me angry.
The boys are so mad that instead of fuming impotently and then going to sulk in their rooms like the rest of us, they actually decide to do something about it. Stan and Butters agree that their parents must be punished. They cycle through a couple of ideas and finally settle on running away. While looking through the newspaper for some nice places to run off to, they come across an interesting ad. It's from the Parental Revenge Center of Western America. They put their escape plans on the back burner and check out this Parental Revenge Center. Its ad is very promising.
I'm really pissed off at my parents and I want to impose swift and horrible revenge upon them.
If you're wondering what kind of person would run such a company, wonder no more, because it's Cartman. Surprising at first, but then again, not really at this point. It was only a matter of time before Cartman figures out how to turn his ingratitude into a business. And he is an excellent negotiator.
$18,000. How about just 387 easy payments of $199.95? How about $5?
Cartman gives each of the boys customized revenge ideas. Ideas like smearing their poop on their parents' walls, smearing poop on their parents' walls, and smearing poop on their parents' walls.
Go with the baby green in the living room, and then maybe a classic brown or even a nut and corn crunch in your parents' bedroom.
Butters is sold, while Stan is not. Poop smearing doesn't feel sufficient. It's not extreme enough. Cartman's other ideas of chopping up Stan's parents and feeding them to a dog is way too extreme. Stan wants something else.
I want them to see what they did was wrong. I want them to have to admit that they lied to me.
Should we tell them what liars do after they get caught? Well, perhaps we don't have to. Disappointment tastes best when it's experienced in person, not when it's described. So, while Cartman gives Butters' house the poop treatment, Stan tries getting his mom and dad to do the impossible.
I don't think that guy is from the future.
Stan tells mom and dad that he thinks the whole future self thing is a lie, and lies are not the way to get the message across. He tells them that if they want to get a message across, they should be direct and honest with him.
I think this is all an elaborate hoax, and I think that whoever is doing it doesn't have very much respect for me.
It's a nice little speech, but Randy and Sharon stand their ground. They tell Stan that the only way he's gonna get rid of his future self is by staying clear of drugs and alcohol. And it's a commendable effort, standing their ground no matter what. They just forget one thing. That kind of stubbornness is genetic. Stan has a way to be sure.
I'm going to cut off my hand. If he is my future self, then his hand will disappear.
It looks like Randy is trapped. He has to come clean, doesn't he? Nope. Like father, like son. Randy calls Stan's bluff.
Go ahead.
Stan has no choice. He can't back down now. Not when he is so close to making history by winning an argument against his parents. So, he cuts off his own hand. This should win the whole thing for Stan, but Randy stubbornly refuses to yield. Instead, he cuts off future Stan's hand just to protect the lie.
What, his hand did disappear? He is you from the future!
It's over, isn't it? Randy is just too stubborn to admit what he did, and Stan is out of options. Or is he? Stan reveals that the hand he cut off was actually a fake. Gotcha! No. Randy stitches back future Stan's hand and pretends that it was also fake. The guy has lost too much blood. He collapses, but Randy and Sharon still won't admit that they're lying to their son. Randy and Sharon represent a lot of parents, authority figures, the media, and the government. Even when we catch them in a lie, they just keep lying. They know they're lying, you know they're lying, and they know that you know that they're lying. But they keep lying anyway. Remember the lab leak theory about a certain virus that we weren't allowed to talk about? The so-called conspiracy theory? Turns out maybe it wasn't a conspiracy theory. The Chinese were messing around with it. Some of it leaked, and the rest of us had to stay locked in our houses for 2 years. Not to mention the 7 million people who died because of it. But you couldn't mention the lab leak theory at the time without getting yelled at for being a stupid conspiracy nutjob. But now they're saying a Chinese lab was the most likely source of the leak. They're saying it very quietly, and they're not saying it definitely came from the lab. They're just saying it's the most likely source. The evidence is still circumstantial, and the Chinese government is making the usual angry noises. You know what that means, don't you? Did any of the media talking heads who screamed at all the people who dared to even mention the theory ever apologize for being wrong? Of course not. In fact, they're acting like they were right all along and insist that they were in the right about everything else. The whole lab leak controversy got memory hold. It's almost like it never happened, but we all know it happened because we lived through it. So, what happens when you lie with such shamelessness and audacity? That brings us back to Stan. The only way he sees it, he only has one move left. He goes to find Butters.
Our parents are never going to admit what they did was wrong, and they're never going to change.
Stan believes the only way to truly punish their parents is to run away. Then Butters' parents come home and ruin everything.
What the hell is this?
Chris and Linda find their house smeared with 300 pounds of poop. Their reaction is completely unexpected. Even the voice acting for this scene sounds unrealistic.
This might be our fault.
Which I suppose is the point. Butters' parents admit they were wrong, confess, and apologize.
We thought the ends justified the means, but they don't.
This doesn't happen in real life. The kind of liars we have in positions of power are way too self-righteous to ever admit that they're wrong. This is the sort of thing that happens when you convince yourself you're lying for a good cause. Butters' parents apologizing is a scene so unrealistic that Stan is disgusted. Or perhaps he's just angry that his parents would die before admitting they lied to him. In fact, even with this revelation, Randy and Sharon are determined to lie to Stan about why Butters also has a future self.
The Time Matrix pulled in more people from the future.
Oh, stop it, you guys! I know all about Motivation Corp.
With no lies left, Randy manages to do the right thing. He finds someone else to blame, Motivation Corp. Then they hire Cartman to smear their walls with poop.
Well, here, Eric, I cooked you a huge box of cookies as a present.
Thanks.
The one silver lining is that Randy finally admits that he and the other adults have been exaggerating the effects of Mary Jane. They tell Stan that Mary Jane isn't going to turn him into a murderer or a terrorist. What they do is make you feel fine with being bored and kind of waste your life. When you're high, you can watch a tree swaying in the wind all day and be happy with that, instead of using that time productively.
It's when you're bored that you should be learning some new skill or discovering some new science or being creative.
Stan tells his dad that he should have said that from the very beginning. Lying is not good. It creates distrust. Sharon sums up the lesson of the episode in a single line.
If we use lies and exaggerations to keep kids off drugs, then they're never going to believe anything we tell them.
This was South Park pointing out the obvious all the way back in 2002. And sadly, nobody listened. The grown-ups of the time just kept lying to kids about Mary Jane for another 15 years. When I was in school, we were told a lot of scary things about Mary Jane. It was apparently just as bad as Pablo Escobar's white powder, if not worse. But it wasn't. It was bad, but not that bad. When the kids of my generation discovered they were being lied to, it was game over. That's how we ended up with an entire generation of potheads who unironically believe that Mary Jane is good for your health. It's not. Society exaggerates the effects of Mary Jane, and then the potheads overcorrect by exaggerating the benefits of Mary Jane. They turn it into this miracle herb that can allegedly cure everything. It can't, but that doesn't matter. The pro-pot propaganda is so strong that 1 in 5 young adults in America is considered a stoner. This could all have been avoided if grown-ups didn't lie so much. The mistrust of authority figures isn't just limited to pot. It creates a much bigger problem that poisons every element of our society. We see this back in South Park when Stan's mom bakes cookies for Cartman as a present for smearing the walls of Motivation Corp with poop. Cartman says no to the cookies because he wants to start taking care of his health. until future Cartman shows up to congratulate him.
This is the day you turn it all around.
Apparently, Cartman stops eating junk food, studies harder, and stays away from drugs and alcohol, and becomes the CEO of his own time travel company. Given the events of this episode, Cartman is understandably cynical. He instantly rejects that idea.
I'm not that stupid.
And just to spite what he assumes to be his fake future self, Cartman takes the cookies. He decides he's gonna eat junk food, neglects his studies, and abuse his body with as many substances as he can. And just like that, future Cartman transforms from a trim, well-dressed man in a suit to a fat man in greasy clothes. It turns out that the time traveler was real, but because of cynicism, Cartman has ruined his future. The episode wraps up here, and I can't help but marvel at its prophetic powers. Cartman represents a lot of people in our society today. You know them. The potheads, the climate change deniers, the anti-vaxxers, 9/11 truthers, and the supporters of the far right and far left ideologies. These people have been lied to so much about so many things that they've become cynical contrarians by default. They don't have a guiding ideology. They simply believe the opposite of whatever authority figures say is good. And it's partly our collective fault. Take climate change, for example. The climate is changing, and we can make it less horrible by dumping a little less garbage into the air and the ocean. If the climate changes, the world is not going to end, but life will become a little bit tougher, bit by bit. But that message is apparently not capable of inducing a strong emotional reaction. What climate activists decide to tell us instead is that we're all going to die in 10 years. The problem is that they've been saying this for about 50 years now. The deadline comes and goes, but nothing happens, so the activists pick another deadline and start screaming about it. They're not entirely wrong. Climate change is going to change the world for the worse, but all of us are not literally going to die for driving an F-50 instead of a Tesla, or eating meat instead of going vegan. But the activists keep exaggerating anyway, and their failed prophecies have created cynics. Full-blown climate change deniers who set us 10 steps back by doing everything they can to actively contribute to climate change just to spite the activists. Kinda like Cartman eating junk food, getting high, and neglecting his studies to spite his future self. And don't even get me started on politics. We have lost our collective minds. The media has told us so many lies that people on opposing sides no longer view each other as human. I was a young boy in 2008, when supporters of a McCain rally said they distrusted Obama, claimed he supported terrorists, and dropped a bunch of danger to America talking points. McCain took the microphone and defended Obama. He said Obama was a great guy, and they just happened to have a couple of disagreements, that's all. Imagine that happening today. It doesn't. It never happens. CNN and MSNBC lie about the right, Fox News lies about the left, and all the others just pick a side. Objective, neutral journalism is dead, and that's assuming it ever existed in the first place. Every time you turn on the news, you're consuming rightist propaganda or leftist propaganda. It's no surprise that people on opposing sides of the political divide now view each other as demons and treat the election loss like the literal end of the world. They're so brainwashed they don't know what the truth is. All they know are the lies about the other side that journalists on their team have told them. That's what you get when you lie to an entire country every single day for years. And then there are people who don't believe anything they see in the press. Whatever they see, they choose to believe the opposite. All because CNN lied about two things. These ones are no better. That's the lesson here. If you are in a position of authority, stop lying. And if you get caught in a lie, please don't double down and lie harder. Just admit that you were wrong and apologize. As for the rest of us regular folks with zero power, let's not be cynical. It's okay to question everything, but it's not okay to turn yourself into a reflective contrarian like Cartman. Just because whatever you believe is the opposite of whatever your parents, the government, or the media are telling you to believe doesn't mean you're right. Pursue the truth. Don't be a brainless sheep, but don't be a lazy contrarian either.